Anyway, it is time to look at some times past. Graham Finlay joins us once again from the School of Politics and International Relations. Today we're talking about alternative currencies, largely because of the Bitcoin.
The Bitcoin craze.
Yes. You better try and explain to people what is a Bitcoin.
Well, a Bitcoin is a mysterious online... I mean, it's really just like lots of other wacky alternative currencies, which we'll discuss. But this is online, so it's cool. Yeah. So it's called a cryptocurrency in the sense that it involves this complex encrypted computer program, which you can interact with, and occasionally it gives you Bitcoin.
And nobody knows who invented this.
That's right. It was invented by a pseudonymous person, and there are lots of speculation about who that person might be, including one Irish candidate. But all of these people have denied that they are the founder of Bitcoin. And it's now being taken over. I mean, it was sort of launched by this mysterious pseudonymous person, but now it's been taken over by an actual foundation with named people in charge. So
yeah, and it every now and again, because of this this kind of algorithm, wherever it is, every now and again it kind of farts out a Bitcoin.
Right, but you have to actually put some work into it. You have to mine it, as they say. So you have to interact with the program, yourself. And there's been lots and lots. Obviously, with it being the internet, people have tried to host, grab a pile of, internet robots and control vast numbers of computers through malware to make Bitcoin mining easier. Because the internet's a fun place. But that's basically the idea. And the idea is that there's going to be a limited number of them. About 21 million, I believe, is the ceiling. And the pseudonymous inventor, whoever he or they or she are, apparently is suspected of having about 1 million of them. So at current rates, that would be about $1 billion real dollars worth of Bitcoins.
So people are trading in Bitcoins and using them for some purposes or another.
Yeah, they are, and it's actually kind of interesting because increasing numbers of people are accepting it. I'm not sure what it says about the University of Nicosia that they will now let you pay your tuition fees in Bitcoin. Either they're cutting edge and really hip,
I shouldn't be laughing. I'm sure the University of Nicosia is a top-notch
or
place of
desperate. I'm going to go with desperate. And one of the other interesting things is they shut down this Silk Road dark internet site where people were selling all kinds of lurid stuff.
Yeah,
and they were accepting Bitcoin. And this, instead of collapsing the value of Bitcoin, actually seems to have improved its value, maybe because it seems like more of a legitimate currency and not something incredibly dodgy, which dodgy persons circulate amongst each other. So, because there is this tremendous problem. This is actually the story of currency, is the tension between governments trying to control and regulate currency and people off their own bat deciding to launch currencies of their own to meet real needs, whether there's just not enough change to go around, or they want to keep it local, or they don't have any actual money, so they decide to make up some actual virtual money or some new money, which they do have quite a bit of. So this tension is going on, and you see it with Bitcoin. I mean, China has decided to clamp down on Bitcoin. That hurt its value a certain amount, and the U.S. is looking at it with a sort of jaundiced eye. But as of now, it still hasn't declared it illegal, unlike some other currencies in the past, which the U.S. has persecuted with extreme prejudice.
Well, I suppose is that difficult to do in the sense of how do you define what a currency is? Though I suppose Bitcoin but is it could you say kind of vouchers that Tesco give you, are they a form of currency because you can get stuff for it?
And accepted is a currency. So I mean, yes, Tesco vouchers are a type of currency. They're a scrip, as is sort of what they're often called, which is some kind of currency which is only redeemable at a certain store, in this particular case, or in certain kinds of stores, say on an army base or in a mining camp. And those are the most popular things. I mean, as people have pointed out, frequent flyer miles are a form of currency, right? Yeah. But they're scrip. They can only be redeemed at that particular airline. So loyalty points the same way. So scrip has been a very, very popular thing. We associate it with sort of 19th century exploitation, where companies would, especially in mining camps or in logging camps, would pay their workers in scrip, and they would have to buy it from the company store of, if you know the country song 16 Tons, that's about how he always sold to the company store. And the company store charged higher prices than stores which took actual money. So it was a great way of controlling your workers, and is one of the most notorious abuses of the 19th century. But, if you think it's a thing of the past, Walmart was just recently ruled to be violating the Constitution of Mexico by the Mexican Supreme Court because it was paying its workers in Mexico partly in Walmart vouchers. So that's not gone away. But, scrip is everywhere. I mean, if you think about loyalty points, all of these particular companies are trying to encourage us to use scrips. Gift cards are scrip, And one of the ones which I think is most interesting for Irish people might be the use of pub tokens or tavern tokens in the 19th century. They find there are loads of these, and some of them are quite beautiful and are collectible and so forth. And this actually would probably improve my life, because if you've ever sort of had a drink simply because someone else bought a round and you didn't really want to drink, but, it's
it was
rude to say
upon
no,
you, yeah.
right? I'll go on. So what they would do is, and the Duke Tavern here in Dublin is quite proud of its history of doing this, is, if someone bought a round and someone in the round already had a drink, they would give them a token, which was good for one drink. And they loved this for the same reason stores love gift cards, right? Because people lose the tokens, they forget about the tokens, and because often they had the name of the landlord or the publican on the actual token, if the pub was sold, the token was worthless, right? So it's all good from the publican's point of view. They also were used heavily for gambling. So gambling in the 19th century wasn't, in a pub, wasn't over money if you're playing billiards or cards or something like that. It was over drinks. You'd play for drinks, right? So these pub tokens, there's zillions of them out there, and they're some of them are better looking than the actual money of the day. If they brought that back, a lot of unwanted pints would not be consumed.
Goose in Dublin wants to know how much would a slab of Dutch gold cost in bitcoins. I'm afraid the value would go up and down, I imagine.
.000 something, but tomorrow, who knows, 20.
So how far back does this go? And I suppose it really is, the struggle usually erupts because a government would see itself as a sovereign government, and it would see its, any attempt to create an alternative currency as undermining that. I
mean, it goes back a long way. Coins are basically invented in the sort of 7th century BC. Paper money's in use in China in the 5th century AD. But it's hard, especially if you're using coins, and especially if you think that the value of the coin, as most Western governments thought, should be tied to the value of the metal within it. Right, it's an expensive process making coins. The idea that the coin might be worth more than the actual metal contained in it, or it might be a very expensive thing to produce more than it actually is worth, it goes back a long way.
Yeah.
And so governments have long not been able to provide their population with enough coins and change to make their lives going, especially in small denominations. So the 1 cent coin is practically useless, right? And we had that experiment in Wexford, I think, right? Was it where they just got rid of 1 cent coins and 2 cent coins in this country, euro cent. And so even in the 13th century, merchants were giving out their own little small change coins just so their customers would, especially their poorer customers, would have something to spend. And this goes on for centuries and centuries. And people, in the 19th century, again, maybe with industrial processes, minting these merchant and other backed coins was a lot easier. It's all over the place. There's loads and loads of different kinds of tender. And then you bring in paper money, and lots and lots of groups in different countries, whether they're sanctioned by the state or are part of the state, would issue their own paper money. Now, in Mexico, merchants would be issuing paper money. In Japan, every local lord could issue his own paper money. So something like 1,694 different kinds of bills and money circulating in Japan in the 1860s. So it gets kind of out of hand. And the place where it really gets out of hand is not, perhaps surprisingly, the United States of America. Because while there's a coin in the United States, things in the United States have always been wacky in this regard. And there's this hostility to central banking and the Federal Reserve. They only get a federal central bank in 1913. So they're real latecomers to this process.
Yeah.
Because it's in the 19th century that you see the national state asserting itself and say they want to have regional common national markets, they want to control the money supply and so forth, but not in the United States. Every bank, and these were chartered by the state, so every state would charter banks. Every bank would be putting out lots and lots of bills, which in theory were backed up by other bills, which were in theory backed up by gold or actual currency. And these bills, these banknotes, were supposed to be redeemable if you took it to your bank. Now, many, many banks could not have redeemed all their notes. Otherwise, how do you make money as a bank? You lend, some of it out. And these are all circulating. There are about 10,000 different kinds of notes circulating by the time of the Civil War.
And were they all dollars, or did they have different
they were all
names?
indexed. They're all denominated in U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
But it is a crazy time because they'd had a national central bank at the beginning of the American, sort of experiment. Yeah, but they didn't like it very much. And then they had another one in 1811 or so, and a central bank, and they didn't like that either because it seemed too central. And so they got rid of that. And just chaos ensues because there's a massive bank panic, and many banks go bust in 1837. And all these banknotes are circulating, and people have no idea what is going on, right? If you've got a banknote for a US dollar or 10 US dollars, you don't know whether that bank is still solvent. You don't know if you go to the bank whether they'll give you anything actual for it. You just have no idea what's going on. So eventually they have to start publishing magazines which say which banks are solvent and which ones aren't, which ones are still taking dollars back. It's not a great way to run an economy. And it has lots of bad results for the economy. As people point out, if you've got a banknote from Arkansas and you're in Massachusetts, you can't go to the bank to demand that dollar back. And so it makes trade between the various regions of the United States very, very difficult. So, but they persist in this, even to considerable extent after the Civil War. And the other exciting thing about the Civil War is to pay for the war. Lincoln's in a bit of a quandary. He doesn't want to borrow the money he needs to prosecute the war from foreign powers who are charging him 30% interest. He doesn't have enough money to do it himself, so they just print money. They print the greenback dollars. 150 million greenback dollars, which they then basically pay their soldiers in and force everyone to accept. And it fluctuates against gold and the actual hard currency, gold coins and stuff like that. But by and large, they pay their way through the war doing that. And that's the origin of the greenbacks. Now, they go away and they come back in 1913 again with the reestablishment of an actual proper national paper currency.
Touch and go there.
But it is an amazing example of developing a currency specifically to pay for this war.
Right, we do have to take a commercial break. Lots more to talk about after this. Right, we have been talking about alternative currencies. Tell us about what is the Liberty Dollar. Who invented that?
This actually concludes the whole arc of wacky currency in the United States, right? So. People have always thought that coins should be backed up and ideally contain the precious metal which they're worth, right?
Yes.
So, and as a fun fact, the Spanish peso or pieces of 8 or dollar was legal tender in the United States until 1857. And in fact, was preferred for most of the U.S.'s history before that to actual American dollars because it was had a higher silver content. It was less likely to be debased in various ways. And in fact, the U.S. was on the gold standard until 1971, where it just became impossible to maintain the thing.
But many people still feel that they should go back to the gold standard.
Indeed, and one of those is the guy who bizarrely goes by, and this apparently is his real name, Mr. von Nothaus.
Bernard von Nothaus.
Bernard von Nothaus, who is a Hawaiian coin dealer and libertarian, and in his spare time founded the Free Marijuana Church of Honolulu.
A very fine church.
Which probably accepts Bitcoin. But in any case, he's an enemy of the Federal Reserve. And so he started putting out, claiming that they were either contained enough silver or were backed by silver, because he put out bills as well, his own Liberty dollars from 1998 till 2009. And these millions of these were out there in circulation and were accepted by lots and lots of people because he really wants to get rid of the idea of a centralized control of the money supply. Why this closes the story is that the U.S. government pushed back extremely hard against this. By 2009, the U.S. government feels like it can handle the currency thing by itself. Thank you very much. And so they land on this guy like a ton of bricks. The FBI and Secret Service go into his operation, which he's not running out of Hawaii. He's running out of Evansville, Indiana, and seize several million or 2 million coins with the face of Ron Paul on them, which libertarian followers of the U.S. will like, the Ron Paul dollars, and put him on trial. And he is eventually.
What is the charge? Actually, is it counterfeiting?
There are a number of charges. Counterfeiting. He ends up being convicted in 2011 of making and distributing money, which is an offense in itself.
Right. Okay.
So they didn't want to call it counterfeiting, and as an act of domestic terrorism. Perhaps unique because
that's a bit extreme.
They're accusing him, and they convicted him of trying to destroy the money supply of the United States. So and the most bizarre thing is he's convicted in 2011, but he hasn't been sentenced yet. which is odd. So the whole thing is so he's out walking the streets, presumably not giving out Liberty dollars anymore, and because they haven't sentenced him yet. Maybe they haven't figured out what the sentence for trying to destroy the money supply should be. So that's a very bizarre episode. But yes, governments these days really are clamping down on these things.
Right. Okay. You'd have thought now if they were going to, I would have thought the Free Marijuana Church of Honolulu might be something that might warrant investigation, but clearly not.
Apparently not.
No, but that was okay.
But the idea that these alternative currencies might be backed by something real is actually more widespread than you might think. So most of these local favor trading or credits, which involve sharing time, and these have sprung up in Spain. There are time banks in Spain, and in Greece there are these alternative units called TEMS in response to a crisis. Well, they're backed by people's time. People give an hour of their labor and they get one of these units, right? Another one is the watt system in Japan, which is each one is backed by a kilowatt. Produced by a sort of groovy citizens cooperative power plant.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that around, but then some of them are just backed by nothing. So for example, there's this guy called JSG Boggs who draws US dollar notes, maybe a $100 note, and goes and spends them. And then the receipt and the stuff he gets and his change all become part of the artwork, which he then sort of is prepared to display and so forth.
Oh, right.
Surprisingly, he's been arrested for counterfeiting in both Australia and the UK, but has always gotten off.
Okay.
Well, he only does one side, so that might be one of the giveaways.
That might be one giveaway. But if you go in with a drawn banknote and say, can I buy, that bag of sweets?
Hand-drawn bags.
Draw a bag of sweets and hand it back to him.
But he quite likes, that's true, but he quite likes going to people who don't know that he's an artist who's doing this and trying to get actual stuff for it. So.
They just think he's weird. Also, what you were saying to me during the break about bits of pigs are coming back as currency.
And some countries are getting on the act. So Vanuatu has decided to embrace its traditional currencies, and these include woven mats, which are sort of used as currency, pig tusks, and cowrie shells. Now, cowrie shells, or shells generally, have been used as currency in every continent except for Europe, and so it's had a long persistence into the 19th century. But it was traditional in Vanuatu as well as some other places, and now they've got a few banks which are actually taking in all these pig tusks and animal skulls and stuff like that. And having them in their vaults, and at the ratio they're converting them, they have something like $1 billion in reserve in this bank in Vanuatu, where the local chief, using a system of writing he devised himself, keeps all the notes. But it's had remarkable effects. Vanuatu is encouraging this because people who don't have a lot of the actual currency, which is internationally tradable, do have skulls and pig tusks, and they're able to send their kids to school and go to the doctor, neither of which is free in Vanuatu.
There you go. Skulls and pig tusks.